Howdy, everyone. I'm back working on the airplane, and I say that because, unbeknownst to everyone out there, I had taken a little vacation, so I had not worked on the airplane in about a week or so. So I'm back, and I'll get you caught up on where we are. So you can see that I've done some riveting on the canopy frame skin. I don't have it finished. Obviously, you can still see there's quite a few clecos. But I did get most of this row done, this front row completed. The areas where you see clecos still in place, like these two here, two on the other side, and then there are a few on this forward edge here. Those I cannot do by myself. So my wife's going to come out here shortly, and we're going to finish these up. But I did do the solid rivets that I can do by myself, and these across here I was able to do, of course, and then the pop rivets. A couple of things I want to point out is that now that I'm starting to get more and more permanent anchor points, the frame itself is starting to come together nicely, and the fit and finish is, in my personal opinion, of course, it's my work and it's my airplane, but I think it's exceptional. You can see the fit along the curve here, the seam between the two skins. This might be a little difficult to see with the clecos in the way, but that seam is really nice. There are no major gaps. There are little nuances, that you can see there's a little bit of a gap right here. The gap between the two skins is really nice. It's just that this, for some reason, is sitting up a little higher. I may try to put a little bit more of a bend in here, but I'm not going to worry about it too much. And then, of course, as it comes across and then comes down on this other side, it's actually very nice. I'm quite pleased. And remember that this was all done in steps. If you watch the other videos, you know what I'm talking about. Steady as she goes, nice and slow. It's very tedious, but when you get to this point, it's actually quite rewarding and worth the effort. And all of this has been done with superb edge distance on the hinge holes up underneath here. Remember, that's what we started with. We got the hinges drilled with outstanding edge distance, almost perfectly centered on the hinge, and then we built off of that and worked through everything else. So very pleased. You can see more rivets here, and I've got some rivets here, and then of course these that I just talked about. You'll note, keeping in mind that these are very shiny, very reflective surfaces, you'll note that the areas that I had shimmed, I was concerned about this row of rivets here and these rivets through here that I have shimmed. I was concerned about if you didn't get them shimmed right when you did the riveting, the rivet would pull the skin and you'd have, relatively large dents around the rivets. And you can see that that is not the case. They are actually quite flat and they look quite nice. Another thing about the fit, I've got my 1/8 inch spacer here. I've got an 1/8 inch spacer here, keeping this rail off of the fuselage 1/8 of an inch. I've got it clamped down to the fuselage, and then this back bulkhead is clamped to the roll bar with the spacers, the 7/8 spacers in between. With that in place, you can see how this matches with the side of the contour, the side of the fuselage. And then in this front area that we've talked about in the other videos, you can see how the skin runs absolutely perfect with the top of the longeron. And that's, again, with the frame riveted to it, the side rails riveted to the frame, and the frame is sitting down on top of the 1/8 inch spacers. So this is all spaced correctly. And the fit through here, again, is exceptional. And I'm not saying that to show off. I actually got pretty lucky with it. I'm just saying that it can be done. You just have to work everything in very slow, simple steps, one step at a time. And here's the other side. You can possibly see how that runs perfectly with with the fuselage. And again, it's sitting down on the spacer. And again, you can see the contour along the side of the fuselage. So I'm very pleased. Everything is coming along really, really well. So now at this point, oh yes, and you can see, well, maybe you can't, but putting that diagonal bend through here really helped the skin. You can see how it's laying almost perfectly flat on the side of the fuselage here. These Kalecos still don't have enough pulling power to really pull it around tight, but this will, I'm assuming this will look even better through here when these are actually rivets, because it will definitely pull everything nice and tight and flat through here. But putting that angled bend that I talked about previously really, really helps this skin to lay down, and it takes a lot of the stress out of the Kalecos and out of the rivets. So I still cannot open the canopy all the way. This gap in here across this flat edge and a little bit in the corners is still too tight to this skin, and this skin will actually hang up on this skin when I try to open it. But again, I'm going to worry about that when everything else is done. So I'm happy at this point, very pleased with the fit and the finish. Very pleased with how the riveting has come out so far. There aren't any major dents. I got the spacers figured out correctly, so it's nice. Everything is tight and solid and no dents so far. So I'm going to pull this whole assembly off of the airplane. My wife's going to come out here and she's going to help me get these last few rivets that I cannot do by myself. And then we're going to move on to other things, which I'll explain here in a minute. I am not going to do this row of rivets, and I am not going to do these 4, possibly 5 rivets at this time. And I'll explain that here later. So I'm going to get this off and do some more riveting, and then I will move on to the next thing. All right, talk to you later. Howdy, everyone. Next up for me, of course, I'm going out of order. If you follow the plans, this next step that I'm going to do is to install the skin that rivets to the side rails. Now, on the written plans, this step comes after you put the actual canopy on. But I'm going to do it now for a couple of different reasons, and I'll explain those in a minute. But first, a couple of quick things. When you look at the plans, at some point you have to install the lift struts for the canopy. These struts here, these have to be installed. To install those, you have to make these blocks, and all of that's given to you on the plans, how to make them. So, of course, this block has to be bolted to the frame rail with some screws, and I'm working on that first. So I have to figure out exactly where the block needs to go and put holes through here. Now, I screwed up because I've already got this skin riveted in place, and the instructions tell you that the 2 holes that you put in here for that mounting block, the skin is supposed to be dimpled, and then the frame is countersunk. So of course I can't dimple the skin now. I don't have it riveted here, and I don't have it riveted through here, but I don't think I want to take a chance on unbending the skin just to get the dimpler in there. But before I get into any of that, I have to make the actual blocks first. And I just started on that, and I've got one complete. Where did I put it? Here he is. So this is the block that I just made. And you'll note a couple of things. One, I purposely offset the holes a little bit. The directions show the holes equally spaced from each end, and then this is centered. But I moved the holes just a little bit because, for one, if you remember on the frame, there's that diagonal bend, and it's going to be very difficult to see, but that diagonal bend is right through here, and it runs downhill. Where I plan on putting my block, that that diagonal bend interferes just a little bit with the one corner of the block. So you'll see that on that back side, I relieved the block right through here. This is relieved at an angle. And I did that to match the angle on the frame. So now the back side of this block will sit flat. That's why that is sanded the way that it is. And then on the other end, it's just straight across that relief. So because I took off some material here, I wanted a little bit more edge distance, so I moved the location of this hole just a little bit. You can see that here. You can see how close this one is to the edge and how this one has been moved down away from the edge a little bit. The other thing that I did was this hole, I also moved this hole up just a little bit, like a 16th. I moved it up higher because I wanted just a little bit more room to clear so that the lift strut would not interfere with anything. I don't think that's a problem at all, but I wanted to make sure. Another reason why I relocated the hole, I got this written instruction included with my lift struts, and this looks quite old. Of course, it's all hand drawn. And you'll note that the strut is laid out on this drawing the same way it's laid out on the plans. You've got the strut end attached to the fuselage, and you've got the lift end, if you will, attached to the canopy frame. That's exactly how it's shown on the plans. You've got the strut itself mounted to the fuselage, and you've got the lifting arm attached to the canopy. However, on the back side of this, it states, right here at this bottom paragraph states, you may want to reverse the struts from what is shown on the drawing, as there is some thinking that it will extend strut life. I have no idea what that means. I don't even know if it's true. However, if I have this end here of the strut closest to the canopy, I just wanted a little bit of extra room just in case. So that's why I decided to move that hole for the attachment just ever so slightly higher on the block. That's why the holes appear to be slightly off. It's very minimal, but that's what I wanted to do. The last thing I wanted to bring to your attention is the blocks come on a bar. The blocks are just a bar. It's like a 4-inch, 3-inch long bar. Then you just cut them to length. You can see that with this screwed in all the way, it sticks out of the backside right here. It sticks out of the backside of the block just a little bit. And that could be a problem because when you have the block bolted to your canopy frame and then you bolt this in place, it's going to push on the canopy frame. So I'm going to trim this back. I'm going to take this out. I'm going to take this out of the block. I'm going to file or grind this back so it doesn't protrude past the block. So the blocks come already made to this size. You just have to cut the length. So you can't make the block any fatter is what I'm getting at. The block comes this width. So the only thing you can do is cut this down a little bit. I suppose you can put a shim in here, but it's just as easy to cut this back. So just be mindful of little things like that. So I've got this block made. I'm going to make another block for the other side. And then what I can do is take the block. I can take the block and I can fit it to my frame, and then I can mark through these mounting holes into the frame, drill the frame, and then from this side I'm going to have to machine countersink enough for the screws to do what they need to do to mount the block. I don't think I can pull this back in template, but I'll get there in a minute. So let me get cranking on making another one of these blocks and trimming this back so it doesn't protrude. And then I'll see if I can't get the holes made in the actual frame and see what I can do about possibly dimpling the skin. All right. Talk to you later.